Rank number 91, the Briley Brothers, Richmond's most brutal killing spree. Richmond, Virginia. A man heard knocking at his front door late at night. Outside were four young men he recognized. Friends, neighbors, people he had known for years. Inside the house were his pregnant wife and their 5-year-old son. He hesitated. If he refused to open the door, they might break in. If he let them inside, something told him his family might never leave the house alive. He opened the door. Within minutes, the house became a crime scene. And what investigators would soon discover was far worse. Because this wasn't just a robbery. It was part of an 8-month killing spree led by two brothers who had already left a trail of bodies across Richmond. A number, a name, an account that cannot be undone. Tonight's entry. Rank number 91. 12 confirmed victims. 12 suspected. This is the story behind the number. This is Behind the Veiled Truths. Act 1. The First Signs. Linwood Briley began killing long before the Richmond crime spree began. In 1971, he was only 16 years old. One afternoon, he saw his neighbor, 57-year-old Orlean Christian, hanging laundry in her backyard. Linwood retrieved a .22 rifle. He took aim and fired. When police arrived to arrest him, his reaction stunned investigators. He shrugged. According to officers, he said calmly, "I heard she had heart problems. She would have died soon anyway." Because of his age, Linwood received only a short sentence in reform school, but that sentence placed him alongside another troubled young man, his younger brother, James Briley. It was a warning of what was coming, but no one yet understood how violent the brothers would become. Act 2, the pattern emerges. The spree that would terrorize Richmond began in March 1979. The Briley brothers, along with their younger brother Anthony and a teenage accomplice named Duncan Meekins, forced their way into the home of a couple named William and Virginia Bucher. They tied the victims up, ransacked the house, then set it on fire. The couple barely escaped with their lives. It would be the only time during the spree that victims survived. Days later, another man named Michael McDuffie was shot to death during a home invasion. Then came another attack. A 76-year-old woman named Mary Gowan. She was assaulted, robbed, and murdered. The killings were escalating, and they were becoming more brutal. The city had no idea a small group of young men were responsible for a rapidly growing list of murders, but the violence continued. Act 3, Investigation and Mistakes. One of the most shocking murders happened on July 4, 1979. A teenager named Christopher Phillips was standing near Linwood's car. The gang suspected he might be trying to break into it. They surrounded him, dragged him into a yard, pinned him to the ground. Then Linwood lifted a cinder block and dropped it on the boy's head. Another life added to the growing count. Months later, country musician John Gallagher stepped outside a dance hall between sets. He never returned. The gang forced him into the trunk of his own car. They drove him to a remote island and shot him. The entire robbery yielded only $6 and a ring. If you follow stories that reveal how ordinary crimes can spiral into something far darker, consider subscribing to Behind the Veiled Truths, where every episode uncovers another hidden chapter in criminal history. But the violence was far from over. Act 4, The Discovery. By October 1979, the gang was operating with increasing confidence. One night they followed Mary Wilfong, a nurse, back to her apartment. They killed her and looted the apartment. Days later, they invaded another home. 2 victims were murdered with extreme brutality. The crime scenes were so violent, investigators struggled to understand how many attackers had been involved. But the final attack would bring the spree to an end. The gang arrived at the home of Harvey Wilkerson, a man they knew personally. Inside were Wilkerson, his pregnant wife Judy, and their young son. They forced their way inside, bound the family, and murdered them. But something had changed. Police had already noticed the gang's car in the neighborhood. When the bodies were discovered days later, investigators quickly connected the vehicle to the Briley brothers. The killings that had terrorized Richmond were finally about to be exposed. Act 5, Arrest, Trial, and Aftermath. Police arrested the group soon afterward. Investigators quickly realized the weakest member of the gang was Duncan Meekins, the teenage accomplice. They offered him a deal. If he testified against the others, he could avoid the death penalty. Meekins accepted. His confession revealed the full extent of the Briley gang's crimes. Murders investigators had never connected. Victims who had disappeared months earlier. The scale of the killing spree shocked the entire state. The ringleaders, Linwood and J.B. Briley, were sentenced to death. But the story did not end there. In 1984, the brothers masterminded a dramatic prison escape along with several other death row inmates. For nearly 3 weeks, they were fugitives again, until authorities finally captured them in Philadelphia. There would be no second chance. Linwood Briley was executed in the electric chair in October 1984. J.B. Briley followed 6 months later. Their 8-month reign of violence had ended, but the scars left on Richmond would remain for decades. And like many crimes in this countdown, the victims were ordinary people whose lives were cut short by senseless violence. If you're following this entire Top 100 countdown, subscribing to Behind the Veil Truths ensures you don't miss the next case. Because the stories ahead only grow darker. 12 confirmed. 12 lives stolen. Rank number 91 is behind us. But the descent continues. Because the next case on this list reveals something investigators would later call one of the most disturbing murder recordings ever heard. This is Behind the Veil Truths, and we're getting closer to number 1. Next episode, the number changes again, but the killer behind it left something investigators said should never have existed. And the recording would become one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence in criminal history.